make sure that we are doing that. Wow. I'm so honored that you are here with us tonight. We are doing a 10-year reflection on the National Moment of Silence, which took place on today. Oh, I said on today. Hey, 10 years ago. And I am the artist formerly known as Feminista Jones, and I am so happy to gather some people that I really love and respect to join us this evening. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that you all like this. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like the video. If you're watching us on Instagram, make sure you share with your followers so that they know that you are watching. It is on YouTube, Feminista Jones page. I want to share a video that I made, a quick, like 1-minute video that I made, just to capture some of the images. So give me 1 second and I will present this. Okay, let's see. I was overwhelmed by how many people were in this, and that image that you show, I'm going to show it to everybody here. This was made by one of our supporters. He was tracking all of the hopefully, let's see if that comes up. He was tracking all of the locations for the National Moment of Silence Villages. So what was it? The pigs were killing a lot of us, right? Remember, we were thinking about Brother Eric Garner, and we were thinking about some other folks, pigs want to be pigs, Tamir Rice, well, not yet, but Trayvon Martin, and we were getting tired, and I started sensing a lot of unrest. I've been an organizer since I was like 19 years old, so I was really thinking about what could possibly happen, right? If people got a little out of control. And I thought about James Brown, when after Dr. King was killed, he put on a concert to try to calm people down, right? Because people were ready to wreak havoc. And I said, we got to do something. And so I went on Twitter. At the time, I was a big Twitter user. And I went on Twitter to put out a call to see who would want to organize a simultaneous events in their cities. So I should probably also add myself back here because I'm talking to you all. That's great. Immediately, people began speaking up and saying, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do one. I'll do one in Philadelphia. I'll do one in Atlanta. I'll do one in Chicago. I'll do one in DC. I'll do all these, people were just everywhere. They were volunteering. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is great. So then we were like, we got to organize. So I started reaching out to some folks. I reached out to the Dream Defenders, and they put me in touch with these brothers from an organization called Freedom Side. Those brothers came in and they definitely helped with us getting the word out and making connections and kind of organizing. We had organizing calls. We started setting up social media pages. We started, collecting all of the data and the information so people would know where we are going and what we are going to be doing. If you lived, in Wyoming, or actually Wyoming is one of the few states we didn't have one, but if you lived like in Seattle, where could you go for a vigil? And that's how it started happening. And we started organizing this, I think, on the 10th, and we were organizing it for the 14th. So in 4 days, we were able to do this. And what I think is important to look at, this is not even all of them. We ended up having like over 90 vigils, I think, in 42 states and 5 countries. We actually had them in other countries, which, you know, I wasn't even prepared for. But what was interesting was that so many of them sprung up that day. Like people hadn't even heard it, but they scrambled to organize and they did it that day. So the National Moment of Silence happened. Of course, there were threats to it. People wanted to take over, wanted to make it a national day of chaos, all these kinds of things. I'll be honest, I reached out to a lot of civil rights and social justice organizations and did not hear anything back. And so we just kind of went ahead and just started organizing it. When I say that this was a movement of the people, this was a movement of the people. People kept asking me, what organization are you with? And I kept saying the American people, because that is really who it was. We weren't being backed by anyone. We were not getting money from anyone. This was all love and voluntary. And so across the country, you saw in the pictures, hundreds of people in different cities, sometimes thousands of people came together for this one moment of silence. And right now I want to bring in a friend of mine, pretty amazing brother who attended a rally. So I'm going to bring my brother DeRay McKesson to the stage, and he's walking around and he's ready. We all at home, y'all. Like we old now. You're muted. You got to take yourself off mute.
It's good to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. So tell me a little bit. I've read about this. I've heard this a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your connection to the National Moment of Silence, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so when Mike was killed, I saw it on Twitter, and then I saw it on CNN. And on CNN, it looked like the protesters were wild, but on Twitter, it was like the police had gone crazy. And I remember there was a call for people to come to St. Louis, but I had to go to work that week, so I couldn't come immediately. And I was with another group of teachers, and they were like, DeRay, we're going to this moment of silence at the NAACP building in Minneapolis. And I was like, oh, I gotta go. So we literally are in a conference room in Minneapolis, like 100 of us, and we are like tying ribbons on our arms, and we're on that moment of silence, like on a conference call. And that was the first thing I ever did when my friend was killed. It was the first organizing. I left that, and then I stood on the sidewalk with a sign. Like that was literally the first piece of real activism I did in the last decade, was the moment of silence. And then when I finally got to meet you, I was like, oh my gosh, she did the moment of silence. But that was the first thing I did. And then a couple of days later, I drove down to Ferguson, and the rest is history. But yeah, this was, we stood in a conference room on a conference line and had the moment of silence.
That, what did you feel about the spirit of like this kind of organizing? Like, what was the vibe like? Like, what were you feeling in connecting with the people?
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like, in hindsight, it helped me realize that anybody has a power to organize, and that it doesn't always have to be like flashy. Like I think that lately, I think people think of organizing has to be this like flashy thing, but we were at a conference room standing up around a speakerphone. You know what I mean? And I felt it. It felt like I was connected to people all across the country. We had no video, no nothing, but we had each other. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh, something is happening that is different than any other thing I've experienced. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Even seeing the graphic, I hadn't seen that graphic before to see all the other cities. But I remember that, like in Minneapolis, it was a group of people that I wouldn't have said was necessarily like activists at the moment. Like I didn't identify as an activist on the 14th for sure. But in hindsight, that was the very first thing I'd ever done.
I appreciate you for sharing that. And I also appreciate you writing about it in your book, because one of the things that I grapple with is, and I'm a historian now, I'm doing all these wonderful things about documenting our experiences, and just kind of how this seems to have moved out of collective consciousness as huge an event. Like, honestly, the largest anti-police brutality demonstration in modern US history, right? One day, one single action, and has somehow been almost completely erased from the collective consciousness. What is that about? Like, do you have any thoughts about like what that's about? Like,
yeah, I do think that like very quickly, one of the things that happened in the movement space is this idea that a small set of people started everything. That became like sort of this ownership of the movement became a thing. So it was interesting because as much as the movement was sort of anti-hierarchy and the idea of ownership of the movement became real. And in that idea of ownership, a lot of things got erased.
Mhm.
So, if you weren't a part of that crew, and I think about this as like a really honest piece of organizing. And I think what is true about what happened after Mike was killed is that everybody sort of did different things that mobilized a lot of people. And there was no one person, there was no two people that did it. It was like, this mobilized me. I had a really big Twitter presence later. I did a lot of things, but there were a lot of people who did things that if they had not done it, we would not have had the moment of unrest and uprising spread throughout the country. So, I appreciate you even doing this 10-year reflection, because it reminds me that like anybody can change the world, and it doesn't always have to be some wild thing with people who have been organizers for 800 years and da da da. You get a group of people together, they
Mhm.
can do it.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think that there is, for me, there was this balance. Again, I was an experienced organizer, and social media became more of a tool for me. But it taught a lot of people. I think we looked at it, about 80% of the people who hosted the vigils had never done this before. They had never done anything like this before. We had a lot of guidance. We had the calls. I mean, everything was very, break it down. Here's how you, down to how you set up your Facebook page and the branding and the images and stuff that we wanted people to use. It was very, very organized, right? And meticulous. But that helped a lot of people kind of feel more comfortable. Like, I'm not just out here just flailing and trying to figure things out. So I think there was kind of that intergenerational kind of connection thing happening, but also like experienced versus novice and things like that. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I appreciate you being here. I have some more people that I would love to bring to the stage. So I'm going to send you to the back, but thank you again. And thank you for everything that you have done since then. Why don't you quickly tell people, what are you doing now? 10 years later, what are you doing now?
So I lead a group called Campaign Zero, and we do laws, policies, and practices about the police. We have led the largest legislative change to reduce the power of the police in American history, which we're proud of, and we have a lot more work to do. And then one of the honors of my life is that I get to support Leslie McSpadden Head, who is the mother of Mike Brown, and we meet a ton, and we help her put her vision in practice about honoring Mike's life, not only talking about his death. So she's amazing. I want everybody to meet Leslie, and I want her to know how many people's lives were changed and how many people continue to fight in Mike's name.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. So I'm going to send you to the back. And at this time, I'm going to bring in my sister, Dr. Meredith Clark. And the reason I'm bringing her in is because, one, she is the Black Twitter expert. And two, she really can talk to kind of like what this moment kind of meant in the history of things. So Dr. Clark, wait, but I have a bio for you. I forgot to read DeRay's bio. I just feel like everybody knows who he is. So DeRay is a civil rights activist focused on issues of innovation, equity, justice, all that great stuff. We know who he is. Okay, but Dr. Meredith Clark's research centers on the intersections of race, media, and power, exploring topics ranging from media processes such as newsroom hiring and reporting practices to the digital narratives created by social media communities. Since 2010, she has been studying Black Twitter and is currently completing a book on the subject. We love it. We love it. We love it. Talk to us. Like, give me your thoughts. I'm very interested in your thoughts.
Thank you first so much for having me as part of this discussion. It's hard to believe that a decade has gone by since this night, since the Ferguson uprising, since we lost Mike Brown and so many other Black folks to the hands of state violence. As an ethnographer, a digital ethnographer who's been studying Black Twitter and what I call a recovering journalist, I found it really interesting to hear DeRay talk about just the difference between what we were seeing online versus what we were hearing in national news narratives. And you asked the question, why do you think this erasure has occurred? And I will say that the erasure has occurred because mainstream media sets the agenda for the country, for everyone who looks on. And so the minute that mainstream media decided, one, that there were specific people that they should focus on as the faces and the leaders of movements at that time, that became the story. And we've been able to follow those people over the years and see what they're doing. But what was missed in that agenda setting, in helping people understand what was happening at that time, were the efforts of everyday people who were just doing what they could with the tools that they had. And that's what happened with National Moment of Silence 14. I, at that time, was just finishing up my dissertation that is the book on Black Twitter. In fact, I had defended the Monday after Michael Brown was killed. And I remember, oh yes, the timing was unbelievable. And so all of this stuff is happening at the same time. And I remember trying to get people to understand that we're not talking about, you know, a huge campaign, just as our brother said, like of professional organizers at that time. We're talking about some people who know how to use digital tools, some people who realize that they can't just sit back and let nothing happen, and some people who want to give in some sort of way, who want to be involved. And it's that collection of people that help get this off the ground. And one thing that I want to point out about National Moment of Silence 14 is that I honestly don't believe that a lot of the connectivity that we had in the months following and in the years following, we would have had if we did not have that collective, synchronous, silent protest in cities and countries around the world. There's a passage in the book that's coming out end of the year, beginning of next year, maybe, depending on these edits, that puts together three people. Two of them are here on this call tonight. And I know that two of y'all haven't even met in person, which is still wild to me. But all of you are connected because of the work of National Moment of Silence 14 and because of the work of the Ferguson Response Tumblr. So there's a lot of history there that even though mainstream media may not have paid attention to or have sustained attention on, we remember and we recognize those contributions.
I want to show something to folks. Thank you for everything you said. For me, you know, I don't do any of this for the accolades. That day, I had all the media in the world was just trying to get a soundbite from me. And if you actually read through the articles, you don't get a lot of quotations from me because I didn't want to talk to people. I just wanted to focus on what it is that we're doing. But I do want to share something with folks. I want people to be able to see this. Hold on. So what we have here is a database. So I'm, you know, we're you and me, we're going to do the history. We're going to do the documentation. I wanted people to see there are over 100 articles written about the National Moment of Silence around the world. Like these are national, but also international papers. And I just want to show people, like, we documented all of this. That's just kind of what I do. I document these things. I want to make sure that people know that this happened and we are, you know, we were there. And most of them, I'd say a good 95% of those articles still exist. I've archived, you know, several because we know what happens, you know, when these digital spaces start, you know, deleting things. Excuse me. And I can't let this be gone because all I saw was the will of the people in action. And I mean, it's an organizer's dream. I got to be honest. It was definitely a dream to see people kind of coming through. But I appreciate your insight into this idea about how mainstream media wants to craft the certain narrative. And I think, you know, when I started thinking about it, I used to be upset. I'm like, how do you just erase everything that everybody did? But I was like, that's why you erase. That's why you're doing it. You want to erase that there were everyday people all around the country who were able to unite and come together and do this one thing. Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm still overwhelmed by it, but that was like pretty awesome. So what are you doing now, 10 years later?
Well, 10 years later,
you got your degree and you know everything.
I'm a professor, and it's wild because 10 years later, I'm back in the place where I started. I'm back at UNC Chapel Hill as an associate professor on faculty here. This is the institution where I earned my PhD. As I mentioned, the book on Black Twitter is coming out. There is a chapter about agency and activism, which touches on National Moment of Silence 14, but also relays a number of the stories just from everyday people. I think that's the one thing that I want not to get lost in any conversation, right? And it's at the center of this conversation that Black folks were hurting. We had lost one of our own. We had lost many of our own. And so my work continues to extend telling our stories that stem from that moment, but also looking forward to the stories that we're going to tell in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Now, I'm going to send you to the back. I'm going to send you to the back. And I'm actually going to bring up my good. Wait, I was supposed to remove you. Okay, I'm going to add my good sis. Yeah, me. I'm going to read your profile. Hold on.
Hello.
So Yemi Kambahi, her is a Black queer femme organizer, liberation strategist, and reproductive justice organizer. Yemi is currently a senior organizer at Black Feminist Future and founder at Freedom Birth's Doula Services, a full spectrum doula practice. She has a background in intimate partner violence advocacy, health education, and policy advocacy. And she is based in ATL, shouty. All right. So please, first of all, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for gathering us here to commemorate this moment. When you hit me up, I was like, I've been thinking so much about this. You're reading my mind. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So please tell people how you're connected to it and what your experience was like.
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I was just a baby. I wasn't an organizer. I didn't consider myself to be an organizer yet. When Mike Brown was killed, I was watching like the rest of Black America, really. I was watching primarily on Twitter. I was so fearful. I was so distraught. I was in Washington, D.C. for the summer between my freshman and sophomore years in college. And I had been to, I think, one protest before, and that was the protest against the verdict in the Trayvon Martin trial. And I had never organized anything before. And I just remember feeling like I was so close in age to Mike Brown. And I felt like I had to do something. And I remember seeing your tweet asking, like saying, you know, I'm trying to pull this thing off. Who wants to be a part of it? And I just remember this like scrappy crew of mostly queer Black women responding, saying, hey, I'm in ATL, I'm in DC, I'm in New York, I'm, you know, all over, and responding, and you just DMing us like, hey, I'm connecting all the people who said they were in New York. I'm connecting all the people who said they were in DC, right? And so I became a part of that DC crew. And when I tell you we pulled that thing together in like just a few short days,
Yeah.
but as
it was huge. DC was one of our bigger ones. Like I sat the next day and was like, whoa. I was like, what is happening? DC? Like everybody and their mama was there. Everybody.
Yes, literally. And that moment, like, I mean, literally thousands of people showed up in Malcolm X Park. And there were tears, there was chanting, there was singing, there was raging, there was grief, there was silence. And it was really, the thing that I really appreciated most about this call for a national moment of silence was that it really gave Black folks in particular space to just collectively hold the heaviness of what we were experiencing. And I just think that was so ahead of its time in terms of a collective care practice in organizing spaces. And as an organizer, a baby organizer who is, you know, trying to pull off an action for the first time, that really set the tone for how the rest of my organizing career went, and how I feel it's important to kind of like show up for people and create space for people, for folks to heal. So.
And so tell us what you're doing 10 years later.
Yeah, well, that really set off my like trajectory as an organizer. That was the first action that I was ever involved in. And shortly after, I went back to Atlanta for school, where I continued to organize alongside the folks who did the Atlanta action. And I am now a full-time organizer in the reproductive justice world. I do Black feminist organizing, and I am very much involved in the anti-Cop City organizing efforts here in Atlanta, which to me, there's obviously this through line, throughout all of that. So that's what I have going on now. And I will say I'm in a community of really amazing, brilliant Black organizers here in Atlanta, all of whom really came out of organizing around National Moment of Silence or some type of action in the wake of Mike Brown's death. And so really he should still be here, but in his legacy, he has given a whole generation of organizers a fight, and he's given us, our lives really. And we wish he was here, and we also make sure that we fight every day for him.
Thank you so much for sharing that. For all the people that did organize, vigils that are watching this, I just want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart. There was no way we could have done this without people like yourself, taking these risks and putting in the work for those few days to make sure that we could get this done. Over 100,000 people, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that got me on the Department of Homeland Security's watch list because they couldn't quite understand what was going on, right? I started seeing documents with my name and stuff, and they were tracking me. And then I was living, where I was living in New York, and then I started feeling like I was being followed, and I started noticing that more police were tailing me now wherever I was going, and I was getting random phone calls and all kinds of things. Started having to watch my back, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? So I knew that something was there. This wasn't just a walk in the park. This took a lot of courage from a lot of people. I see our Dr. Clark said Black identity extremists. That was what they were calling us at the time. But I want to thank you again. I'm going to send you to the back, and I'm going to bring in my sister. You got to get off mute though, because we just got to be ready for this.
I'm ready.
There's so much that I can say. Let me read your bio because there's so much that I could say. Leslie Mack is a Brooklyn-born and raised organizer, digital strategist, anti-racism expert. She's a first-generation American of Jamaican ancestry. She founded the Ferguson Response Network, Safety Pin Box, and currently runs her own digital strategy and event projection consulting firm. Okay, so I put out this call. I saw somebody said, I can do Philly. Tell me where we go from there.
That was me. I was the one who said I could do Philly. I really remember just wanting to do something. And when I saw your tweet, it gave me something to do. And I know for a lot of folks that feeling was so strong and so palpable. As you were talking with Yemi about the profound loss we all were watching unfold, and so much love and sympathy out towards Mike Brown's family, to his mother, to his father, to all of his loved ones. And so I think what I saw was just an opportunity to do something and to gather folks. And it was exciting. I really didn't think much was going to happen. I had been doing a lot of legislative work before that, a lot of stuff around ballot measures and things around a lot of different social justice issues. But this was the first time I had done, direct community organizing where I was just calling strangers together. And we did the action in Love Park in Philadelphia. Way more people showed up than I ever thought. I had a little clipboard to try and collect email addresses just in case folks wanted to stay in touch. And we ended up building out at first weekly meeting and then a monthly meeting of a full constellation of organizers in Philadelphia that eventually became the Philly Coalition for Real Justice. And that started because we all came to Love Park because you put a call and an offer out to bring people together and hold space for Mike Brown in that moment. And so for me, it was life-changing because I saw two things. One, that everyday people were interested in doing something, and two, that social media could be an avenue for people to organize themselves together and around. And so you really changed my life personally with just that question, because it led me to start the Ferguson Response Tumblr, which Meredith mentioned earlier. And this came, when I say directly from National Moment of Silence, I mean that when they announced that the grand jury had made a decision about Darren Wilson, about the case, I literally utilized the contacts I'd made through National Moment of Silence, and I hit up 20 organizers that had done National Moment of Silence. And I said, hey, would you be willing to just like say whenever the announcement is that you're going to hold space for folks and just time it with whenever it happens? They said yes. I put those 20 cities up on Tumblr along with a form for folks to fill out. And well, I think you can play a video and people can kind of see what happened.
Been not just upset and despair, but organizing around this issue sprung from Ferguson. This is part of what I mean in a very granular sense. Part of the reason there's so many rallies and marches and vigils organized for today is because in advance of the grand jury's announcement, groups did stuff like this. This is a group called the Ferguson National Response Network. This is on Tumblr, and they built essentially this graphic template for people to announce protests and rallies after the announcement. So any group wanting to organize a response to the announcement ahead of time could just use this template to plug in the graphic, which would have a map of their location, just plug in exactly where you wanted to hold your rally. Almost all of these events were tagged for the day after the announcement. People picked a specific time and didn't have to be a pre-existing organization, right, with a big contact list or standing monthly meetings or something to be able to organize an event in response to the grand jury announcement. And so we have been seeing these events in response to the grand jury announcement all around the country today and into tonight. And again, these have been over.
That is amazing. That's, that you were able to do that and kind of, set up a system, right? We have to systematize this. Oh my gosh, okay. I'm not going to go into modern organizing rants, right? Because, I'm going to be honest, again, I came into this as a community organizer. I will be one till I die, even though I've, shifted now to academia and stuff like that. The glamorizing of organizing, the red carpets, the millions and millions and millions of lost dollars. I could go on and on. I ain't want nothing to do with none of that because I do this for real. Mm-hmm. You do this for real. Yemi does this for real. People do this for real. And these are lives. There's our lives at stake, and so I'm looking now, and DeRay mentioned, this idea that people feel like things have to be fancy. And I'm like, no, they don't. You don't need a circle light to organize, a demonstration. You don't need to be, make it Instagram friendly. You don't have to make a TikTok about it. You could actually just go and help people. And I'm really hoping that when we reflect on these things, that we can kind of go back to what we were doing then before Elon Musk came along to destroy the primary mechanism that we use, before Mark Zuckerberg decided that he wanted to suppress. I'm telling you, all of this is a direct result of this, right? The way they had to figure out how do we suppress these people, because now they're not supposed to be using our tools to organize. They're not supposed to be on social media organizing and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? And so they saw what was possible, and that's when the rules started changing.
Absolutely.
That's when Twitter started looking different. Yep. Okay. Tumblr got rid of that, and that
they got rid of Tumblr. It was such a huge organizing venue, and it is, Meredith I can't wait to read Meredith's book because I know she's going to document all of this stuff. But I know for me, when I say you changed my life, all these things were true. But what it did for me personally was it sort of made me a personal conduit for movement spaces where I'm not joking. Folks would just call me up and be like, who's in Tallahassee? And I would be like, hold on, let me see who organized some stuff there. And it allowed me to really see how deep and wide the movement for Black and collective liberation is, and the promise of it when it's allowed to flourish. And so, you know, I take, like you said, I take this all very seriously. And, you know, that Tumblr was, the thing that for me as a digital strategist that I love the most about Ferguson Response Network is that nobody knew who it was. It was like, even in that clip with Rachel Maddow, she was like, this group, it wasn't a group. It was just me very late at night on my computer with a Google form. But my point was, I didn't want it to be tied to a personality. It really was supposed to be an entry point for anyone to participate. And so, yeah, I mean, all of those lessons I learned directly from you and from my experience with the National Moment of Silence 10 years ago.
I really appreciate you. I'm going to send you to the back. I got one more quick special guest that I'd like to bring to the stage. So I'm going to bring you to the stage because I want to talk to you. So if you're watching, I have Sister Leslie expanding on, and I'm so honored. And I just want to say before I give you a second to, you know, a few moments to speak. I had an 8-year-old at the time. Oh, he's about to be 8 years old. And I was taking my kid to protests and organize things. There's even a really nice clip of him on Democracy Now! Talking about Mike Brown and Tamir Rice and all those things. And later when the pigs took Tamir, I looked because him and my son look almost identical, and it just I couldn't. And I've met with his mother, and I interviewed her for Ebony and things like that. All I could think about was being a mother to a Black boy, and I was like, y'all, I just need y'all to remember this woman lost her child, right? As so many have, right? But in this moment, y'all, this woman lost her child, and all I could think, and I was checking with folks in, you know, down in Ferguson, St. Louis, like, y'all got her? Y'all got her? Like, is she surrounded, right? So I do want to bring you to the stage. First of all, I want to say rest in peace to your beautiful son. We all know that he should be here, but we know that he is, you know, in my tradition and my beliefs and my spirituality, he has not left us. He is here. Like he became an ancestor. He is with us here. But I want to thank you. And if you want to say hello to folks and just kind of share any of your thoughts. And first of all, this is the first time I'm talking to you. I've not in this whole time been able to actually talk to you. And so I appreciate that. But welcome.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to join and just say thank you to everyone who has stood in the gap for Mike, my family,
Oh, I think we lost her. Hold on. Leslie, I think we lost you. There we go. You're back.
because
I
of
can hear you now.
just the dynamics that happen after, you know, and the impact. And what I'm learning on this call is that you all was that light, the organizers and the many people around the world who unfortunately had to see that picture of Mike laying in the street. I couldn't have done this by myself. And if I had to, Mike, no, the world would not know about what happened in Ferguson that day and many days before that. And I look at this and the brightest light that I can, you know, is that God used my son for purpose. And now we have all found our purpose. And I appreciate you all for believing in that purpose and standing in it and being vigilant and being resilient, because we have to do that for our own every day. And I know it touches you in a very different way because you do have a baby. And it's a scary thing to even witness and to think about our other children. I do have 3 remaining children, but that's why every day we get up and we fight. And unfortunately, we may have to be fighting for the rest of our lives, but I know that we will not give up and give in because we believe and we know that we deserve better. So I just wanted to jump on and say thank you. I appreciate you. And also, I'm learning that all those times that I felt alone, I never was alone. And I just appreciate you all for standing in solidarity with my family near and far. God bless.
Thank you so much. And I'm gonna send you back because I know it can be a little nerve-wracking. My son is about to be 18 in 2 months. And I hate that I live in a country where I have to say, just please let my baby make it to 18. Because my son is 6'5". My son is 250 pounds. As young as his mind is, they see him like a grown man, right? And so we still live with that. And all the organizing that that I've done, that others have done, we still live in that reality. And she is absolutely correct. That is why we fight. That is why we continue to do what we do. That's why we educate. That's why we organize. That's why we resist. That's why we vote. We do all these things. It takes multiple layers. And, Dr. King said, I might not get there with you, right? Because he understood that this is a journey, that we have been fighting this fight for hundreds of years, right? And when you put it in perspective, right, it can be empowering to know that you are continuing the work of people who came before you, but it can also be frustrating because you're like, how much longer do we have to fight? How much longer do we have to put up with this? So I want to thank you for speaking. You were never alone, sis. You were not alone then. You are not alone now. Honestly, like, DeRay can give you my information anytime you need just some space. I gather these ladies back up. We'll have our own little group video chat and do what we need to do if you are, feeling like you need that, because that's who we are, and that's why I love these women, and that's what that's about. So I appreciate everyone who came and who watched this. If you're watching the replay, thank you very much. We just want to honor the work that people are doing and make sure that people understand and they read about it in history. We can read about the March on Washington. We can read about the bridge in Selma. We can read about, the Little Rock Nine. We can read and learn about all these things, even though they are trying to erase these things from our children's education. But what we will not let them do is erase us and erase how we have harnessed social media and digital technology to take our movements forward, and how we are building community across the country, across the world because of this digital technology. We will never let them erase the power that we have, the power to mobilize, to organize, and to build community with each other. I appreciate everyone that was here. Meredith, Yemi, Leslie, DeRay, Leslie, I am so honored that you all joined me this evening. To everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Please share this. Make sure that people know. Teach your children. If you had children that were born within the last 10 years or children that were young when this happened, make sure that they learn about this. Do the research. All you have to do is put the hashtag NMOS14 into your browser and you will get all kinds of stuff. We have shared the database before, but I'll make sure that I share it out on my website, feministajones.com. I'll have a link there on my media page so you can go and read all of the art. I mean, I'm telling you, it was like 110, 115 articles written about this. We will not forget Mike Brown. We will not forget Trayvon Martin. We will not forget Tamir Rice or Sandra Bland or anybody else who lost their life unnecessarily because of American racism. Thank you, everyone, and take care.